back to the channel. Long time no see. Humble apologies for not uploading anything new and fancy. Life is normally in the way of my YouTube endeavors, but I'm trying my best to keep to some sort of schedule. Speaking of schedule, I am actually planning on creating a regular routine where I would upload a certain theme of videos on each day of the week, or something along the lines of that. So I'm planning on creating a regular routine of, say, Monday will be Inside My Head, Tuesday or Wednesday will be rather Nodai Classic, and Friday will be another category, just so that you can get used to some sort of regularity. Today we are going to have a look at a really awesome game, and I would like to dedicate this game to one of my students who beholds the black player of this game as one of his favorite, who is none other than Nezhmetdinov, who is playing against Polugaevsky. Nezhmetdinov was a lesser known Russian player who was very famous for his uncompromising, brutally honest attacking style, but sometimes, quite often actually, he got carried away with his attacks, and his one-sided style sort of prevented him from making it among the greatest of chess. But on the odd occasion he pulled off some absolutely amazing games, and his victory against Polugaevsky is going to be one of the games that we are discussing here. The opening is a little bit odd. It starts off as an old Indian, but here Polugaevsky plays this strange e4 move. Knight f3 is far more common in this position, and in fact a better move. What you need to understand here, or what I think needs to be understood is a rather better way to put it, is that back then in the 60s, 70s and even in the 50s, there was a quite common conception among grandmasters on the top level that if you could create this so-called Maroczy bind and clamp onto the center and cover d5 as powerfully and with as many pawns as pieces as possible, then you would all the time be clearly better, despite of the tempos lost on this queen up, queen back business. Now modern chess looks at it in a very different way, and they consider that the dynamic features of black's position and the lead in development would easily make up for the positional disadvantage. Please note that queen d2 is not a mouse slip. The idea with queen d2 is that the bishop is going to develop onto the long diagonal. So normal developing moves are coming for a while. Castles, as you can see, black is nearly completed with development. And white, he played bishop d3. Quite logical again, trying to make sure that e4 is overprotected. That being said, I think that something like f3, rook e8, knight e2, as ugly as it may look, would have been a better way to make sure that both of the pawn chains are actually intact and not really attackable. In which case, black would probably have to remove one of the knights in order to bite into the center. For example, knight h5 with the intention of f5, or knight d7, knight e5, and then f5, something like that. The problem with bishop d3 was that it also stepped into a lot of tempos like so, and it didn't quite solve all the problems that he was facing on the king's side. Nezhmetdinov played here knight g4. Very logical play, really. The knight wants to swing back to e5, once again with the same intention of massaging the bishop. And although I doubt that he foresaw this, but in case of knight e2, of course, now black is going to get a very juicy queen g4 in. Let's call it queen h4. Queen h4 actually was played. Knight g3 to defend the mate on f2. Right here I would like to pause for a second, because this is a very important moment that top players don't necessarily recognize, or lower rated players don't seem to pick up a pattern here. When you have a knight on f3, a white knight that is one of the best functioning piece to cover a castle, a king that is castled on the king's side. It covers a lot of squares here and here, so the queen can't go out there, and it also protects the very important h2 square. So it's an ideally placed piece on f3 in order to defend the king very efficiently. On the other hand, a knight on g3 is best described as a cluster disaster. You hardly ever want to have a knight on g3 when you're castled here, because not only is it misplaced, but in fact often you would be better off not having it at all. So, case in point here, you are going to see very soon. After knight g3, Nezhmetdinov dropped the knight back to e5. Which was a bit of an awkward and unnecessary move. I think that the computer was already preferring f5 with further opening files and diagonals and so on. Knight e5 was played. The bishop dropped, they castled. And here actually, Nezhmetdinov, I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but he decided to play f5, which essentially is missing a forced win here for black, which is knight g4. And that's the motive to be remembered when facing this g3 knight and king on g1 setup. Very often the winning motive is that after h3, which is only to defend the mate, you take on f2 and you walk away with a free win, which is the case here. Note how neither of the big guys can take back. King takes bishop d4 check, and we are winning this back. If king here, then check, and it's even worse. If rook takes back, then the knight is free to be captured, and now bishop d4 and bishop takes h3 is threatened as well. And finally, queen takes bishop d4 is curtains again. So this is how it could have and really should have ended, and I don't really have an adequate response as to why it did not happen. But he went a little bit crazy with f5. Obviously nothing wrong with the move, but probably a bit unnecessary. f3 was the response, and now the bishop came alive on this diagonal. Another very typical motif of the King's Indian, which this opening and this, excuse me, whole entire structure really looking like right now. Going back to d1. Please note how white is really short of good moves for the queen. Queen here steps into knight d4. Queen can't go here because it's hanging. Queen c2 steps into knight d4 again. So he had to go back. And again, here I didn't quite understand Nezhmetdinov's thinking, because he played f4, whereas most people would consider check king here and then f4 way more logical, because then we have got this bishop in their face, and so now we quickly can launch an attack that will end up in this mate. I honestly have no idea why he opted for not doing this, but in the end of the day, he got famous for playing one of the most amazing chess games of history, and I didn't. So I guess he had a reason. So he continued this King's Indian style attack. Once again, I would like to argue that bishop here have enabled the same thing. Knight d5, and as per traditional, and again, most of my club level students here would go like, oh my god, c7 is hanging, defend. Nah. Forward, my friend. Forward, Kazimierz. Which is what good old Tolush, another very famous Russian attacking player, used to say to himself when he was playing with Blitz. Alright, so g4, obviously with the intention of tearing the king side apart. g3, some sort of response had to be made, because after, for example, knight c7, g3, h3, bishop takes h3 is just curtains. So Polugaevsky decided to push the pawn up, and after take queen h3 to push that one up too. And it's looking like he's sort of managing to keep the position closed. It's quite interesting to see how, for example, knight check doesn't achieve a thing, because the king just goes to f2, and I can walk away even to e3 with reasonable safety. As you will see, the game features a similar king walk, but not quite with the same level of safety. However, after f4, another thing to note is that this knight, again, a typical thing that club players tend to not to notice, is actually not hanging, because bishop e3 check is knockout. The bishop e6 was played, calmly developing the piece. Polugaevsky dropped the bishop back to prevent the trade. Probably not a necessary measure at this point. And now Nezhmetdinov again calmly bringing all his dudes to the party. And Polugaevsky finally decides to run. And this is where all hell breaks loose. This move is actually an attempt to trap the queen. And Nezhmetdinov, instead of avoiding it, goes like, fine, trap my queen, buddy. By all means, I'm gonna let you do that. And he plays knight b4. Once again, beautiful chess. Note how every single move that Nezhmetdinov makes in this whole entire game, from the point when he drops back here From here on, it's forward, 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 forward. The guy does not move a piece backwards. It's absolutely amazing. This is how chess, my book, in my head, in my view, needs to be played. When you go back, you go like, nah, naughty, don't do that. Forward. Punch after punch after punch. Beautiful chess. And here comes the epic finale. A beautiful queen sacrifice, once again in the spirit of not going back but forward. Rook takes f4. Amazing stuff, opens up the diagonal and exposes the king standing right in the middle of this crossfire. Capturing the rook is impossible because after bishop takes, knight takes c2 check. That's the queen and the king is still absolutely dead. So the only option is actually to accept the queen sack, double check, king d4 and bishop g7. And this silent bishop g7 move is what made this game so famous, because right now it's not that easy to see what's actually going on and what is black's main threat. And the funny thing is that black's number one threat after bishop g7 is actually to play pawn b5 and then knight c6. That's a mate. And it's absolutely breathtaking to even consider or to accept the fact that with a whole entire queen down, we get to play two more moves before we create the threat. So that's one, that's two, and that's when we have the threat. So what that means is that white will have here two moves at his disposal at least, deal with it, and yet it seems insufficient. It's well worth trying to set it up at home when you're analyzing this game without the engine and try to find out what you would be able to do to prevent this mate as white. If you want to do that, pause the video now because I will reveal the big secret here. There is a beautiful line here for white, sorry, for both colors really, that sort of delays the mate the most efficient way, but even that one leads to a forced loss, and it's knight g1. So the defending idea is that we need to clog up the third rank so that somehow this stops being a mate because you can go back. That's the only medicine. And incredibly enough, after rook g3, the only way to continue for white this pursuit is to go back to e2. But now after rook here, knight e2, there is an actual win here. Check takes, check here, king here, check, king here, check, king must go to a4, and now we managed to take everything. The best part of it is that there are still plenty of hanging pieces on the board and black is winning. This would have been the best case scenario for white after bishop g7. Polugaevsky didn't quite see it, or if he did, he thought that a different measure was sufficient to stop the mate, and he played a4, which is by brute force stopping b5. However, this allows a very cute finish, c5, dc, and bc6. Awesome chess, and now we have got a new mate on the horizon in the shape of pawn c5. Once again, the only medicine against that is blocking the third rank, so that now the king can escape via c3 if we were to play c5. However, this time of course we take the bishop, and the forced mate in the end is just quite amazing. Takes, takes, king b5, rook b8, king a5, and after knight c6 check, Polugaevsky threw in the hat, or rather the towel, sorry, into the ring, which was really a little bit poor sportsmanship, because if he played it out this far, he should have followed proper etiquette and allowed the mate, or he should have resigned earlier on, like somewhere here-ish. But whatever, an amazing king hunt, a fantastic game, showcasing beautiful imagination and a very entertaining and enterprising style that I think most of us really would like to claim as our own. So yeah, if this guy is your role model, I can only say good pick. Good pick, because at his finest, he absolutely played amazing chess. So I really, really highly recommend you to watch through this game again, and please take a very important note of what was going on from here on. It was such a beautiful attack, always going forward, relentless attack, never backing up, and always being ready to sack ridiculous amounts of material in order to expose this king and eventually deliver an absolutely beautiful mate. A really, really awesome game. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will be back with more soon. Thanks for watching.